Today we're working on lazy girl jobs. Welcome to Working On It, the podcast that helps you navigate the complexities of the modern workplace. I'm Lauren Spearman, brand consultant and advocate for care, transparency and flexibility in the workplace.
And I'm Molly Johnson-Jones, CEO and co-founder of Flexa. Lauren and I are here to provide you with practical advice, hopefully insightful discussions and expert guidance on how to thrive in your career.
In this episode, we're diving into a topic that's making waves on social media, lazy girl jobs. We'll explore what the term really means, the pros and cons of these roles, and how they fit into the broader conversation around work-life balance.
We'll also discuss the controversy surrounding the term, its impact on workplace culture, and whether these jobs really are as lazy as they sound. Plus, we'll share some insights on how to find and succeed in roles that prioritise work-life balance without sacrificing career growth.
And a quick thanks to our episode sponsor, more on them later. Molly, I had a visceral reaction when I saw the term lazy girl. I didn't want to do this episode. Immediately, without even knowing what it was, it had my back up. Could you explain what a lazy girl job is?
And I think that's actually the intention of the term, is to get a visceral reaction out of people. And I think, interestingly, we can talk more about why the sort of cultural shift happened. But the word lazy has really, really negative connotations. And so I think this was an attempt to own it and to say, actually, I am not super career driven. I really don't want to work enormously hard. I want to do a relatively simple job for pretty good pay. And that's what I'm happy with. I can maintain work-life balance. I can go to the gym in the evenings. You know, careers aren't everything for everybody. And that's kind of the intention of what that term means. Like people generally doing office jobs, sending a few emails, maybe doing admin tasks and taking home a salary that means that they can live their lives as they want to.
I saw a stat that apparently on LinkedIn, there's an 80% increase in people talking about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Do you think this is in direct relation to that? And is it maybe a post-COVID thing where we've kind of assessed, you know, where we want to take our careers, for example?
I do a lot of thinking about it since we first talked about the topic. And I think this is primarily associated with Gen Z. Not all lazy girls will be Gen Z, but it was a term that was created by Gen Z. And I think in some ways it was a response to the previous trend, which was the girl boss trend, right? Which was heavily associated with younger millennials.
Yeah.
And that was the real over-glamorization of hustling incredibly hard, getting up at 5 a.m, meditating, having a green juice, going to the gym before starting work at 7.
Yeah.
And it was all about career progression and absolutely smashing it to be seen as somebody super successful, but at all costs. And, you know, millennials, yes, we are a very, very successful generation now, but that also came at a cost of burnout, of mental health issues, of health, general health issues. And I think Gen Z saw that and saw that not everybody wanted that. It was like we were a bit of a canary in the coal mine in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think when you see an entire generation lean into something that is potentially so damaging, you have this response. And so girl boss became the backlash into lazy girl. They're all slightly frivolous, silly names.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that it never happens with male terms or other lazy boy jobs, the boy bosses. But I think it's in response to that, and that's where it started to come from, to try to regain some control over their futures.
And I guess it's really interesting since I knew we were discussing this. I had a conversation with a friend just 2 days ago. Hadn't seen her in a while, and we were talking about, you know, work, and I was like, how's it going? And she was like, I was offered a chance to step up for promotion, but I didn't put myself forward for it. And I was like, you know, how come? And she's like, do you know what? I've just realised that actually the next step up would be people management, and that's not something I want to do. She's like, I feel like I'm paid fairly for what I do. You know, I earn enough that I'm okay. And actually, yes, what I'd gain in salary, I'd be giving up in, I guess, that work-life balance, or having to, you know, start thinking about work outside of working hours, or not being able to quite switch off in the same way. And actually, it was really refreshing to hear that, because I think we often correlate not wanting to step up as to exactly that. It's lazy, but it's not necessarily laziness. It's just not necessarily prioritising your career, which is absolutely A-okay.
Yeah, being unambitious in your career and being lazy are not the same thing. They are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but they're also not mutually inclusive. And it's, to your point, fine to be not career driven, to have other priorities, to be happy with earning decent money in a relatively straightforward role. But I think there is something that is also potentially slightly damaging and unrealistic coming out of this trend as well, where there are a lot of people that expect to be given a lot and to be rewarded for doing what would be deemed lazy girl jobs, which I think is tricky because the whole point is that you are saying, I'll get better work-life balance, I will work less hard, I won't have to manage people, I can switch off at 5 o'clock and that's that. But then they're expecting the promotions, the benefits and the treatment of the people that are incredibly career driven and will give up a lot in order to progress to the next level.
Yeah, because I guess ultimately if you're saying that you're happy at this level, then surely exactly that, the payoff is that you don't get that seniority, or you don't get that extra money because you are being paid at the level you're at.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, even if you're staying at that level 5 years, if you're not necessarily your salary is only really going to probably progress
With inflation.
With inflation, yeah.
So I think people often forget that just base salary is the reward for doing a average to good job. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception with doing an average to good job that you do deserve more than just a salary, whether that's a bonus, whether that's other incentives, whether that's a promotion, a different title. Whereas actually you have to be exceptional to get those things. And that's what people that are working incredibly hard, are super career driven, are given in return for being exceptional.
But my assumption would be that if you're advocating for lazy girl jobs, and that's where you want to be, surely you would know that you're not going to get above and beyond what, a salary, what you're probably currently on.
Yeah, I mean, I'd assume realistically, yeah, I guess. And you'll have seen much more of it than I will because you spend much more time on TikTok. You have a massive following.
That's why I'm surprised I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
And when we discussed it, I started watching videos and I was like, I think I love what it stands for. I just hate the name.
Yeah.
But again, I think now you've explained it, that actually it's a reclamation, I guess.
I think it's people trying to empower themselves and say, it's okay to be unambitious and take the piss out of a really silly phrase.
Do you think we're seeing this empowerment outside of social media, for example? Like, do you see this showing up in the real world? Employers are noticing that there are people that are happy to stay where they are or only get to a certain point in their career, which has always been the case, right? But maybe people are speaking about it louder than ever.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because we live in a world where everyone forgets that average and below average exists, and everybody thinks they're above average or everybody wants to be above average. Average can only happen if below average in whatever we're talking about does exist. And I think every business needs those dependable people that are just there grinding out a less than glamorous job, being paid fairly. But, you can't then expect somebody or everybody to have these huge career ambitions and to want to be the next CEO. Like, that just doesn't work at all.
It's really interesting. I was in a business a while ago and I knew that we needed someone at an assistant level, and we probably always needed that level, but we knew that hiring most of the people, who we had in the business were like constantly wanting to push for promotion. So we knew that if we were bringing someone in, they probably expected in a few years, whatever, to rise up in the ranks. And I guess we discussed a lot about actually, should we bring in like a contract or something so that there's a rolling kind of roster of people coming in at that level that are happy to be at that level without that promotion.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it can be beneficial to have those people.
It's hugely beneficial for companies. Like, I spoke to a company the other week literally about this, and they were like, we have a problem in that people want to and are good enough to want to move to the next level, to keep progressing, to keep being paid more, to have different titles because they work really hard. And she's like, but then we lose the people doing the simpler, more menial roles. And she was saying, how can we market ourselves as an employer where it's okay to coast? It's okay to really, really prioritize work-life balance and for you to work 9 till 5 and fully switch off, never check your emails after that, take all of your holiday. And she's like, we need enough of those people because it's that consistency and that ticking along that ultimately is the foundation of a lot of businesses.
You touched on being able to switch off at 5, taking full holiday, which I think it sounds so obvious that those things should maybe be universal, but actually they're really not. And actually, I was saying to someone the other day, like since I've started working for myself, I just can never switch off. And I think it's so nice to be able to do that and know that, you're not going to get chased on holiday, or you can switch off at 5 and actually, I'm not going to go to bed till 11, so that's 6 hours.
And you see all the 5 till 9 after my 9 till 5 stuff on TikTok, and people
and that kind
are
of glamorization,
doing.
Again, it's tying back to what you were saying, this kind of glamorization that we always have to be on and we always have to be hustling. But actually, it's so wonderful to be able to have that space to then what fills your cup up with joy outside of work? What do you love doing? You know, whether that may be spending time with family, you know, a new hobby, being able to do a course or something that brings you joy.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I think for so long, we've seen so many people find their purpose in work and work only. And actually there is so much more to life beyond the job.
Yeah. And also it's like, think about, see, when you started becoming an influencer, like that obviously took time from somewhere. And I'm sure there are lots of people where that is eventually their dream career, or they want to end up having passive income or building something else that isn't a corporate career. So in a way, taking a step back in the day-to-day jobs in order to build something else outside of it is an opportunity.
One of the things we talked about in this lazy girl job, kind of what the description is about a lot of it is remote working. But even just saving that time, that commute time, and not feeling like you're starting the day on a sweaty, like central line, for example, which is just, it just riles you up. And so I think there's the stress benefits, there's benefits in that way as well. And obviously not everyone wants to work remotely, but those that do, I think that balance is wonderful.
Yeah. And I think ultimately when we talk about the lazy girl jobs, it's sort of about choosing an easier work life. And as we talked about, there have to be people that want that and support that, as well as the people that do want to grind and hustle and absolutely get to the top of their careers, because there are benefits in both of those sides of things. And if you're being paid enough to be able to support your 5 till 9 after your 9 till 5, and that is what makes you happy, then I don't think it should be stigmatized. But I do relate to what you're saying about the term lazy girl jobs, but it's not because of the word lazy. I think you hate the word lazy. I hate the fact it's gendered, because then I think when it's only talked about with regards to women,
It's spoken as though it's such a negative.
yeah, and like we're the only ones that have struggled so much with working hard that now we need to create our own movement to justify working less hard.
Whenever I talk about job searching online, there's a real stigma around people that job hop.
Yeah.
And they're seen as that's terrible. And, you know, it's immediately, if I, you know, you see people on LinkedIn bang on about, if I see someone less than 2 years at a place, I dismiss them, which I think is bullshit. But then I also think on the flip side, it can be people then sometimes question why people have stayed somewhere so long and not progressed. So my question, or my musings on this is, does that, if someone wants to move to another company for whatever reason and stick at that level, or would they be considered as, well, either you know, you're too experienced because you've been doing this too long and you get dismissed.
So you can't win.
Actually, does that then, yeah, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
But do you think it comes back to what you said before about companies needing those kind of people? Do they not need to be more aware of the fact that they need those people, and to be able to identify that in somebody with a long tenure where they just maybe owned more of something rather than moving up?
And also they can do that, and they can do it so well because of their experience. You know, actually I think, you know, we see that it's the kind of compound effect of doing that job over and over and having so much experience. Actually, that's a really positive thing that they can
Deep
bring.
domain expertise.
Yeah. In terms of thinking about longer term into their career, I wonder if at some point, actually, because circumstances may change or financial situation may change, actually they do want to start progressing in their career a little bit more. I wonder how damaging it may be seen as if they have been coasting at the same level for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because it's not, we haven't seen enough, although the phenomenon's existed forever, hasn't it? It's just been coined with a relatively glib term, but it's existed for a long time. So you wonder whether there's a way of being able to reframe it or dress it up in a way and say, well, I was 3 years doing this role. It gave me really deep expertise in this, and this. I'm now really interested in managing a team, doing that, or whatever it might be. I think it's probably quite easy to reframe it and dress it up in a way. But I don't think there should be negative connotations of choosing something for a period of time. You know, very often when you talk about having an ideal situation, it's often over a 10-year period that completely changes. One day you can be super career driven. All you want to do is earn more money and get a better title. And then you might think about family for a few years. And then you might come back and say, actually, I want a balance of the two. I'm sure for everybody, it varies massively over a 10-year period. It's unrealistic to expect someone's motivations to remain the same for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I think especially over the last few years, you know, previously you'd have your 5-year, your 10-year, your 20-year plan or whatever. And now it's like, there's a lot of people, it's like, I don't even know what's going to happen next month. You know, actually, do you need to worry about that right now? And I guess worry about it if and when you need to change or you're looking for something else.
What would your ideal lazy girl job be? Just pounding the internet, condemning people for using the term.
No, my ideal lazy girl job would be something where I could just look at job like house listings on Rightmove, something related to that.
Yeah.
Organising job listings.
Clicking on the ones that look like spam.
Yeah. Or it could be reporting bad job listings on LinkedIn, you're right. I could become a full-time Karen. Shall we go to a break?
Absolutely.
Fed up with being catfished? I'm not talking about your love life. I'm talking about being catfished at work. Showing up, expecting an amazing culture, great vibes, and instead finding micro fish and micromanagers. But how can you really tell what it's like to work somewhere before you show up on day one? The work index is like having a friend on the inside, giving you all the info you need about a company before you accept an offer or spend hours and hours applying. There are 20,000 companies on the work index with info on culture, benefits, promotion, progression, and management style. Go check it out now at theindex.work. Now, I don't necessarily think I've ever had what we call a lazy girl job, but in lockdown, I was offered the chance by my employer to go down to 80% of my time in return for, 80% of the salary. Yeah. And what I did, I took that opportunity and, oh my God, it was amazing. So I worked, rather than 9 to 5, I did 9 till 3.
Nice.
And having that time to, yes, it was lockdown, so I couldn't do too much, but having that time to go for a long walk or do some exercise or do something that actually really mentally stimulated me and stopped me from, I guess, a lot of stress that came with lockdown and the uncertainty and, living with a boyfriend at the time who was furloughed and, how are we going to manage, all that jazz. I think what it did for me mentally, having that a little bit of extra time was fantastic. And I can really see why, especially if someone has perhaps previously had quite a toxic employer or had health issues or stress issues or mental health or any sorts of stuff where actually their balance and their mental health is way more of a priority than work. I can really see why this concept of a lazy girl job is such a positive thing.
Yeah, I think it really is. And I think, as you said, it was for that period of time where it was brilliant and worked so well for you. And then you obviously went back to focusing on your career. But that variety is often so good for us because it helps us to evaluate what's important at a certain time. And if you wanted to continue in that work, or actually if it was massively helping your mental health and that was something that was worth sustaining. And I think we've often, because work used to be so homogenous, where we'd go into the office 5 days a week, work certain hours, the only differential was the company or the pay. It meant that we didn't really know or experience different kinds of work or really understand what was good and what was bad. And being able to see all of this future of work in front of us, where there are lazy girl jobs, there are girl boss jobs, gosh, that phrase, being able to work remotely and travel the world, being able to work part-time, and all of these are being represented in front of us, I think is so brilliant for people to work out what their non-negotiables at work are.
But just to touch on the gender thing that you kind of mentioned earlier and picked up again there, is we don't see this trend with men saying this. And I kind of often joke that the rise of the fractional whatever is just a cover for men to say they work part-time. Yeah. Because again, it's not, that's
so true.
It's seen as that's not the normal, that's not usual. And I wonder if, I know that this is meant to be an empowering thing, but it again is, it becomes much more of a gender issue than it already is.
Because the people that have sort of started to own lazy girl jobs, within that group, it's understood what it means. But then outside of it, are there still negative connotations attached? I think that is a genuine risk. And just the same with the girl boss or the CEO, that kind of stuff.
Whenever I hear that, I always imagine, those she-wees that people at festivals. As soon as someone says it, I'm like, oh no, they mean females.
But if you flip it round, you say boy boss, lazy boy jobs, CEO, like it sounds so ridiculous. Whereas, to your point, men get fractional. Yeah. That sounds really great.
I actually got a text yesterday from an old boss. She's like, we were in a WhatsApp group, loads of different opportunities. She's like, what the fuck is fractional? I was like, it's just another word for part-time.
Or portfolio career. Yeah.
Oh no, that's me. No, I'm guilty of that. I watched a TikTok the other day and it was talking about portfolio careers. And I was like, this is actually what I do. I don't do one thing. I'm embracing that. You can take the piss what you want. But We'll cover that in another episode. I think we need to remember that being unambitious in your career isn't the same as being unambitious in life. And there's a reason why someone may choose what is coined as a lazy girl job. That could be because actually they have other passions or other ways to earn money, whether that is, it could be a side hustle that earns money, but actually it could be they really love painting, and maybe that's not something that is necessarily going to earn them loads of money, but it's really therapeutic and a really nice way to switch off. Or, as I tried in lockdown, singing.
Did you?
I did an online choir. I was so shit.
An online choir?
I can't sing for a joke.
That was absolutely my worst nightmare.
I did all sorts of shit in lockdown to keep myself occupied. But I think there are lots of other, there are so many other things in life that can bring people passion. Completely. It's not a bad thing if career isn't one of them.
And I think that's such a good point, because there's a danger where, and again, I've seen my 5 till 9 after my 9 till 5, where it's like the lazy girl job is used as a sort of springboard to become a hustler in other areas of your life. And we don't want to try to change the lazy girl job into taking away the fact that somebody just might not be ambitious in their career. But also, if they just want to read their book on the sofa with their dog from 5 till 9, that's also fine.
It's very fine, actually.
Not everybody needs to achieve in every aspect of their life all the time.
No. It's really interesting. At the start of this episode, I was like, I fucking hate this. I was really against it. But actually, I'm like,
you came in really angry.
It's actually a really nice take on exactly this idea that, you see on social media, everyone's hustling, everyone's living their best life, everyone's doing absolutely everything all at the same time. Whereas actually, it's okay to not want to do that, or it's okay to have a job that does allow you to kind of do things that, bring you excitement and happiness outside of work.
It's just a potentially problematic term, but then the reason that it is so tricky is because people want to own it and for it to be a bit humorous, because just saying, yeah, I'm a bit unambitious in my career isn't sexy.
Whereas the reality is, all it really sounds like is we're describing prioritising
horizontal
life.
Career progression.
Yeah.
As a different kind of progression.
Yeah.
Yeah, and prioritising something that's not work.
Yeah.
It's just got less catchy, isn't
it? It seems like this lazy girl trend isn't going anywhere soon. Where do you think this could potentially go in terms of, could it really shape the job market? Could it be that we see actually there's fewer people in that space for those higher roles because actually, there's a demand to stay at a certain level?
I think it's a really interesting question as to where we end up. I think what has happened over the last sort of 10 years when it comes to promotions and career progression that I found fascinating is the representation of more people that are individual contributors. Like, it used to be that being a manager was the only career pathway. And then now we can talk about individual contributors. But again, there is that expectation of getting more and more and more senior and being paid more and more and having more and more responsibility, but not managing people. I feel like we might end up with a third career pathway, which is less upwards and more sideways, which is effectively like you just get better and probably more efficient at doing your lazy girl job, for lack of a better term that we can come up with later. And I think then what that means is, that offer that you had to be able to reduce down to 80% of the time. If somebody wants to move to a 4-day week and they can still get all of their work done, then absolutely, like, they shouldn't be seen as less able or penalised for that. So I think there might end up that sort of third career progression, which is just getting better and better and more efficient at this one specific thing that you want to do.
Yeah, and actually my one observation when I did go down to 80%, and it was only about 3 months that I did it, I felt like my mental capacity was so much stronger, so my workload was so much more productive and efficient.
Because your brain was fresh.
Yeah, rather than feeling, and I don't think any of us could probably say COVID was, our happiest times, and we were such uncertainty, but I definitely think that was really helpful for me, and I'm grateful to have had that opportunity to try that.
And that's one of the reasons that I take such issue with people perceiving like flexible working as wanting to work less hard. I think there's a danger to the kind of future trends of this, that the idea of lack of ambition, because often lazy girl jobs are done flexibly, but that the two get conflated. Yeah. Whereas you can have a lazy girl job and work flexibly, absolutely. But just because you're working flexibly does not mean you're unambitious. You can still absolutely smash amazing career trajectories, or work a 4-day week, or want to work fully remotely, or work part-time and still progress in your career.
And that's interesting because I don't think that I have what is deemed as a lazy girl job, but I do have a very flexible way of working.
Yeah.
And to your point just then, I think being able to work flexibly is actually driving my ambition in work even more, because it's creating a lifestyle for me that feels great, and actually I want to do more of that. So therefore I'm even more ambitious in the workplace right now.
And it's one of the biggest reasons that people stay at companies is flexibility. It's a huge thing for retention because people care so much about it. And increasingly we're seeing companies start to take forms of flexibility away. So it is an incredible sort of token of, like, we're giving you this trust and we're giving you this flexibility. And then, as you say, often people give so much more back.
Molly, should we go to a listener story?
It's a good one this week.
Okay.
I think we are going to have some good advice for this person. So somebody's written in and said, I recently took what you might call a lazy girl job as a customer service rep for an e-commerce company. The hours are fixed, the work is straightforward, and I can do it all from home. At first, I loved the low stress and extra free time, but now, 6 months in, I'm feeling unchallenged and worried about my career progression. How can I make the most of this job while still growing professionally? And how do I explain this role on my resume when I decide to move on? What advice would you give this person?
Firstly, it sounds quite obviously like a lazy girl job isn't for them.
Yeah.
I think they kind of said, actually, they're only 6 months in. So if they've decided 6 months in that isn't for them, there's no way that's going to halt their career progression if you've realised that soon. I think that's great. I think one of my biggest frustrations is when people go, oh, I've got to stick it out for a year because what's it going to look like on my CV? No one gives a shit.
Also, if someone goes, I did a role where I wasn't feeling challenged and there wasn't any progression opportunities, and I realised it wasn't right after 6 months, that's a great reason to move on.
I think if anything, that shows their ambition, because they didn't want to just stay in something where they were going to coast. Yeah, I think the obvious kind of a bit of advice is, great, you've realised that a lazy girl job isn't for you. I absolutely wouldn't worry about how that's going to affect your career progression. I think you've perfectly nailed how they can position that. And actually, if they want to start looking, I guess the clear thing to do is define what that role is that they're looking for and what skills they would need in that role. Is there anything that while they're looking they can develop in their current role? There's kind of skills to help demonstrate they can do that. And actually, I think that positive framing of, I took this role, actually I realised it wasn't for me, this is really where I want to take my career. I think framing it in that way is great.
Absolutely. And I think most importantly, the point of a lazy girl job is to not be worrying about your career.
Yes.
So if it's causing you to worry,
yes,
I'd stop worrying and move.
Yes, nothing is fixed. You can always change your mind, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and it's clearly not for them, and everyone makes wrong decisions. So just change it quickly and nothing bad will happen.
Molly, I think that's it for this week. Thank you for enlightening me about what a lazy girl job is. I feel like I've roller coasted around this episode.
It has been an emotional roller coaster watching your face.
But actually, what we're really advocating for here is finding work-life balance, actually kind of horizontal kind of progression. And actually, it's okay not to be the most ambitious person in the room.
And that having different types of people doing different kinds of roles and modelling different career trajectories is really important, because otherwise you don't know what's out there.
If you have any questions or want to share your own lazy girl job, please do reach out to us on Instagram or TikTok at workingonit.pod or email us hello@workingonit.show.
Next time on the podcast, we're working on lying on your CV.
Ooh, juicy. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep working on it.